is the visa is its foreign policy. And while diplomacy is this broad concept that encompasses the general practice of international relations, we now must necessarily go one step further. We must employ astute diplomacy. Astute diplomacy, sir, involves a higher level of skill, of strategic thinking, and adaptability, and will allow us as a nation to navigate the complexities of the global stage with a more nuanced and effective approach. It goes beyond routine interaction, Mr. Speaker, to include an insightful and strategic decision-making in pursuit of our national interests. To this end, Mr. Speaker, we urgently need to examine our representation at foreign capitals. It is inconceivable that 4 years into this new government, we are yet to appoint an ambassador to Brazil. Brazil, Mr. Speaker, our strongest ally and a member of BRICS, our strongest continental ally and a member of BRICS, Mr. Speaker. We have not yet appointed an ambassador to Brazil. Mr. Speaker, the slot in this regard is completely unacceptable and it must be remedied forthwith. Mr. Speaker, it is also unacceptable that we have no missions in Africa save and except South Africa. And this is but a consulate, Mr. Speaker. Meanwhile, Venezuela continues to court African states individually and collectively. Mr. Speaker, since the disastrous departure of the High Commissioner from New Delhi, we have yet to appoint a new High Commissioner, and we have no high-level representation in Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, in Russia, in Switzerland, Belgium, Kuwait, the United Arab Emirates, and Suriname. Mr. Speaker, we also need to examine our approach to international economic cooperation. Mr. Speaker, the European Union has been Guyana's major development partner since 1975 under successive ACP, EU, Lomé, and Cotonou partnership agreements. In November of 2023 in Samoa, the member states of the Organization of African and Pacific States, a collection of 79 states, sir, and the European Union signed the Samoa Partnership Agreement. And this agreement, sir, would govern relations between the two groups for the next 20 years in the first instance. Mr. Speaker, the provisional application of this agreement commenced on January 1. And Mr. Speaker, despite Guyana, in the person of Mr. Carl Greenwich, playing a leading role in the negotiation of this new agreement, Guyana was neither represented at the signing of the agreement, and today it has not signed the agreement. Our not signing on to this agreement, Mr. Speaker, means that we will be severely limited in the scope of cooperation with the EU. Mr. Speaker, it also robs us of a very important forum, 7 to 9 states, a very important forum for us to canvass our support against Venezuela's illegal claim. Mr. Speaker, astute diplomacy demands that we seize every opportunity to maximize membership of these international agreements and further the interests of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. Mr. Speaker, education and training and development of our diplomatic corps. Mr. Speaker, a corps of knowledgeable and committed diplomats is an indispensable prerequisite for executing the astute diplomacy that I described above. When the APNUAFC re-established the Foreign Service Institute in February of 2020, it was with this vision in mind. Mr. Speaker, it is unfortunate that this government has allocated only an approximately $11 million for training in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. What this essentially means, Mr. Speaker, the Foreign Services Institute will continue to operate as a clearinghouse for opportunities provided by other governments for the training of our foreign service personnel, which in many instances, sir, are not tailored to our specific needs. Mr. Speaker, it does not have to be this way. Under an APNUAFC-led administration, the Foreign Services Institute will be a well-funded, well-resourced entity capable of offering a culturally responsive, world-class postgraduate education to our foreign service personnel. 5, monitoring international migration into Guyana with particular emphasis on the impact of the Venezuelan migration crisis. Mr. Speaker, Guyana continues to grapple with the burgeoning migration crisis, particularly as it relates to migrants from Venezuela. It is settled that migrant overflow can lead to economic and social crisis, negatively impacting the actual citizens of the country. It is being felt here in Guyana, Mr. Speaker. It's being felt in overcrowded classrooms and hospitals. Mr. Speaker, according to the IOM Guyana Needs Assessment Report published in 2021, in 2020, there was an estimated 22,000 Venezuelan migrants in Guyana, with only about 11,000 of that number being in regular migration status. That is properly documented and accounted for. Mr. Speaker, we know for a fact that in 2024, that number is at least 4 times that amount. It therefore means that if this trend holds, we are safe in assuming that there are tens of thousands of undocumented Venezuelan migrants here in Guyana. Mr. Speaker, we are in a crisis. And instead of understanding, sir, the long-term implications of this unchecked migration into Guyana, the long-term implications for Guyana's territorial integrity, the PPPC government continues to adopt a myopic approach, preferring to use this crisis instead, Mr. Speaker, for their own narrow political gain. Mr. Speaker, instead of getting down to the real work of crafting a sound migration policy for Guyana, this PPPC government prefers to spend its time painting the AP-UFC coalition as anti the Venezuelan migrants. Let me be clear, Mr. Speaker, that unlike the PPPC government that continues to discriminate against our Haitian brothers and sisters in clear breach of our obligations under the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas, we are not anti-Venezuelan or any other migrant. We are pro-law and order. And I want to be very clear, Mr. Speaker. Very, very clear, because I've said it before and I've said it again. No migrant who comes into Guyana in keeping with the laws of our land and whilst here continues to abide by the laws of Guyana will have anything to fear from an APNU-AFC government. Mr. Speaker, it is apparent that this government does not see the crafting of a migration policy for Guyana as urgent or important. In February of 2021, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs launched the project to develop a migration profile for Guyana. This project, which will provide critical data for the formulation of a migration policy, was slated to be concluded at the end of 2022. We are now in 2024, and this critical project is languishing. But we on this side of the house, we understand that the PPPC administration has a deep and abiding resentment for studies and decision-driven, data-driven decision-making, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the next AP-UFC government will craft a sound migration policy for Guyana, one that is comprehensive but flexible, addressing the economic, social, environmental, and cultural aspects to promote sustainable development and enhance the well-being of both our citizens and newcomers. But we must be clear about something, Mr. Speaker. The APNU government will be unapologetic about putting Guyanese first. The wealth of this land first belongs to Guyanese. Every Guyanese man, woman, and child. We will take care of them first. And we will be happy, sir, to share the bounty from the overflow with the rest of the world. Mr. Speaker, having identified these 5 urgent priorities that we must address to right our badly listed foreign policy ship, I will use my remaining time to make a few observations about this $1 trillion budget. But first, Mr. Speaker, I want to make one observation on international trade. Mr. Speaker, a major lifeblood of our economy is international trade. As a country that relies heavily on foreign trade, we must be concerned as to what the changes in our economy mean for the acquisition and distribution of foreign currency. Mr. Speaker, the new concentration of our economy reveals that two industries, oil and gold, generated 94% of our foreign policy or of our foreign currency earnings in 2023. According to the existing data, one can envisage oil exceeding the 90% share of foreign earnings, Mr. Speaker, that it was responsible for in 2023 in the not too distant future. While this government, sir, basks as a country in the financial glow of the oil industry, one has to wonder what the current policy on the management and use of foreign generated earnings might be playing in determining our access to foreign currency for our business community and the wider society. Mr. Speaker, shortage of foreign currency should not abound in a country where export revenues have grown over 700% in less than 4 years, and its trade balance to a surplus of over $6.5 billion. It should not happen, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, our public servants. Mr. Speaker, the public servants of Guyana play a vital role in fostering the well-being and development of our society by dedicating their expertise and energies to delivering essential services, to upholding justice, and to ensuring the efficient functioning of our government institutions. They keep the wheels of this country turning. Sadly, Mr. Speaker, our hardworking public servants in this rich country will get the benefit of approximately 1.88% of the money this country will earn. And this is after accounting, of course, for the projected inflation of 2.5%. Mr. Speaker, this indicates a real decline. It indicates a decline in real income from public servants, contrasting starkly, sir, with the progressive yearly rise that they enjoyed from 2015 to 2019 under the AP and UAFC government. Mr. Speaker, every year from 2021, the real income of our workers has gone down. Mr. Speaker, I want us to examine the transfers that Guyanese, including public servants, will receive under the various handout packages announced by this government. In 2024, the government plans to give Guyanese 1.44% of this country's oil wealth to supplement their income. These are the monies that will go directly to school children, to teachers, to youths, to pensioners, and to those dependent on public assistance, and as well as those business ventures. And this will be done either through cash vouchers, or other forms of transfer. Mr. Speaker, when public servants' incomes are combined, and I want you to hear this, Mr. Speaker, when public servants' incomes are combined with the supposed generosity of this government, they would have gained access to a mere 3% of the 2024 income for this country. 3%, Mr. Speaker. It is therefore very, very understandable why the people of Guyana place more emphasis on remittances, which at 5% of the 2024 GDP, sir, will exceed the entire earnings and grants public servants will receive from this PPPC government. Mr. Speaker, in other words, what I am saying is that despite this $1 trillion budget, Guyanese are surviving because of the monies being sent to them by their relatives overseas. What an embarrassment. Mr. Speaker, I want to turn our minds to the PSIP rather. Mr. Speaker, year after year, we continue to point out that the local capacity does not exist to execute the ever-increasing public sector investment program. And Mr. Speaker, it continues to get worse. Execution capacity within the public sector has not experienced any intervention for improvement over the last 3 years. In fact, Mr. Speaker, the brain drain continues unabated. What this means, sir, essentially, is that because there has been no sustained effort or effort at all to improve our efficiency, it means that as the budget grows, wastage also grows. Mr. Speaker, 3 years ago, we showed in this House how with the smallest of adjustments, the PPPC government could give the public servants, among other things, a 10% increase and free education for the thousands of university students who are enrolled in the University of Guyana today. Mr. Speaker, the position as we stand here today remains the same, that with the minutest of adjustments in the public sector investment program, public servants could enjoy a 10% salary increase. We could afford free university education right now, Mr. Speaker. We could incentivize, Mr. Speaker, our nurses and our doctors to remain here instead of, Mr. Speaker, coming to this House to boast. Let them go. We will bring in other nurses, Mr. Speaker. This government simply does not care about the people of Guyana. Mr. Speaker, the reality is, however, Mr. Speaker, the reality, however, is that no matter how much we stand here and deliver the facts and dissect this budget and show how with just such little effort we can make the lives of Guyanese better. Mr. Speaker, it doesn't matter how much the international organizations speak. This government will not listen because they are stiff-necked, Mr. Speaker. And because they are stiff-necked, I will not spend the rest of this budget presentation speaking to them. Mr. Speaker, instead I will speak to the people of Guyana, because it is the people of Guyana who hold the ultimate power. And so I say, fellow Guyanese, the reality is that you have two visions before you for our country. One vision consists of raiding the Natural Resources Fund, racking up a mountain of debt which our children will have to be repaid, spending a record 58% of the budget on physical infrastructure without even attempting to close the horrific efficiency gap, which means that 41% of the total capital expenditure, or $273 billion, will be wasted. Imagine what $273 billion could do in your pocket. The vision of this PPPC government is one that, despite knowing that the World Economic Forum has concluded that the cost of living crisis is the biggest global risk in the short term, would see them setting aside a measly $7 billion to assist Guyanese with weathering these rough times. Their vision.
Remember, to weather the conclusion, you need 5 minutes.
Comrade Speaker, I do move that the honourable member be given 5 minutes to conclude her presentation.
Thank you, Chris. Honourable member, you have 5 minutes to conclude.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Speaker, the vision of this PPPC government is to implement the largest wealth transfer in Guyana's history, transferring trillions of dollars from the hard-working people to a handful of no more than 20 families. Their vision will see the continued undermining of our institutions, the dismantling of the guardrails of our democracy, and the suppression of dissenting views. Their vision, Mr. Speaker, is to do all of this and then use their PR machinery, funded by taxpayers' dollars, to gaslight the people of Guyana, telling us that down is up and left is right. But, Mr. Speaker, there is another vision. There is another vision. the vision of the APNU AFC. And Mr. Speaker, our vision with the people of Guyana at its center sees a Guyana where the Guyanese spirit is strengthened and national unity is fostered and patriotism is perpetually promoted. Our vision sees a Guyana where no Guyanese man, woman, or child will ever go hungry, because we will implement a needs-based food voucher program for low-income and no-income Guyanese. Our vision, sir, sees a Guyana where parents will not have to worry about affording transportation for their children to attend school, because we will implement a needs-based transportation voucher system for our children. Mr. Speaker, our vision sees a Guyana with free education from nursery to university for all Guyanese, and will see the University of Guyana receiving adequate funding to increase its talent pool, to enhance its talent, and to increase research and drive innovation. Mr. Speaker, in our vision, no public servant will earn less than $150,000 per month. And we will work with the private sector to close the minimum wage gap between the public and private sectors. In our Guyana, Mr. Speaker, capital expenditure will only occur after a professional examination of the needs and an examination of our capacity to effectively implement these projects. Mr. Speaker, in an APNU AFC-led Guyana, healthcare delivery will be revolutionized, because we will focus on the delivery of primary health care and on preventative health care, instead of allowing our populations to fall sick and then building hospitals to hospitalize them in. Mr. Speaker, we will focus on retaining our doctors and our nurses. Mr. Speaker, our vision will make Guyana the breadbasket for Guyanese and for the Caribbean, because we will invest in agriculture and we will champion the growth of the non-oil sector. Mr. Speaker, our vision for Guyana will reverse the dreaded oil curse. Mr. Speaker, our vision for Guyana will see a professional government with professional government agencies and interventions necessary to improve efficiency. Mr. Speaker, this will include the re-establishment of a public service training institute. In this Guyana, we envision, Mr. Speaker, that Guyanese will know that agencies such as the Guyana Police Force are actually there to protect and serve them, and not to serve the dictates of the political classes and the elite. Mr. Speaker, I want to break it down for us so that it will consistently and forever be broke. The PPPC is bad for Guyana. They are bad for the people of Guyana. They are bad for business. They are only good for their elite friends and family. This PPPC government, Mr. Speaker, is constructing the early makings of a failed state, and they must be stopped. Mr. Speaker, the AFC coalition is better. We are better for Guyana. We are better for the people of Guyana, because we are committed to a strong democracy. And we place the people of Guyana at the center of our development strategy. Not sand, not cement, not stone. Mr. Speaker, for all of the foregoing reasons, and while I am deeply appreciative of the work done by our staff at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, I cannot support this 2024 budget, rather, as it has been presented to this honorable House. Mr. Speaker, I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Mr. Manzo Walton Desir. And now for the Honorable Member, Mr. Shireen Holder. Honorable Member, you have the floor.
Thank you, Comrade Speaker. Wow, that was a thorough blast. APNU is truly better. APNU AFC coalition. Mr. Speaker, I rise to make my contribution to the 2024 budget with an equal sense of frustration and disappointment like Amanza. and like so many other poor and working class Guyanese. Mr. Speaker, this budget demonstrates clearly, once again, who the People's Progressive Party are and what they really care about: friends, family, and favorites. Mr. Speaker, I want to turn your attention to the Natural Resource Ministry and gold and mining in particular, which doesn't escape the PPP's friend, family, and favorite policy, nor the accompanying mismanagement and discrimination. Mr. Speaker, the coal industry remains a key contributor to the national economic performance and to the hinterland settlement and development. Coal still accounts for 6 to 8% of the non-oil GDP and 60 to 70% of the non-oil exports. Over the last 4 years, however, the coal industry has experienced a 50% drop in declaration from our local small to medium scale miners. Additionally, in that time span, we have not seen the commencement of any new large-scale operations. From the large-scale gold subsector, production has actually dropped from around 160,000 ounces in 2019 to around 109,000 ounces in 2023, a decline of 70%. Mr. Speaker, several reasons have been offered for this dismal performance, despite the fact that gold prices on the world market have remained relatively high, ranging from over $1,600 per ounce to over $2,300 per ounce over the last 4 years. In general, local small and medium scale gold miners are pointing to the waning government enthusiasm in the industry since the advent of oil production. In fact, the new president of the GGDMA had cause to declare in his acceptance speech last year that the gold mining is like the good wife. We must not be distracted from by this new girl called oil and gas. More specifically, however, Mr. Speaker, the industry is plagued by increased illegal mining, increased raiding of the gold operations, increased illegal buying and selling of gold, and increased smuggling. What all this means, Mr. Speaker, is that the gap between actual production from local miners and gold declaration continues to widen. The illegal trade in gold is not only rampant in the mining districts, but also prevalent in our very capital city, Georgetown. The government has failed to adequately respond to these issues. It requires more than just lip service, Comrade Minister, and half-hearted enforcement exercises to reverse these trends. It requires the mobilization of the Ministry of Natural Resources, the GGMC, the Guyana Police Force, and the local communities. It requires a zero tolerance from the government for corruption and cronyism. It requires that the government pay attention and take action and not only be overtly infatuated by the new girl named oil and gas. But, Mr. Speaker, in addition to these problems, local gold mining has simply run out of living space, as most of the accessible work grounds have been worked and reworked to exhaustion and then reworked again. The government needs to urgently increase both the availability of and accessibility to new mining lands. This requires the government to find new areas of gold mineralization and build new access roads. In doing so, the government must ensure three things. One, the gold miners at all scales can have access to these opportunities and not just the privileged. Two, that the land rights of our indigenous people are respected. And three, that our environment and biodiversity are protected. Mr. Speaker, on another matter, in 2013, the PPP government signed with much fanfare the Minamata Convention on Mercury, aimed at phasing out phasing out the all-embracing use of mercury in small and medium-scale gold mining in Guyana. Of recent, apart from a few workshops, not much visible evidence exists that the current PPP government is serious about pursuing this goal. We in the opposition call on the government to treat this matter with greater urgency. Mr. Speaker, we on this side of the House still recognize the importance of the local gold mining industry and intend to positively act on that recognition as the next government. Mr. Speaker, I wish to turn your attention to another aspect of the mineral industry that I know is not on the government's radar, that of making Guyana an investment destination for the exploration of so-called critical minerals. Critical minerals, Mr. Speaker, are those minerals that are important to industry and new technology, but are of limited availability due to geology, economics, geopolitics, or environmental barriers, and are hard to substitute. Many are aware that such minerals include rare earth elements, lithium, cobalt, copper, nickel, and titanium. Critical minerals are projected to remain in high demand and carry high prices. Guyana can benefit enormously from being a producer of any one of these minerals. Mr. Speaker, Guyana has the right geology for the existence of some of these minerals, but to attract mineral investors in a highly competitive global environment requires the government to be proactive in several ways, such as one, the government must conduct its own regional surveys across the entire Guyana land and near-shore marine environment to produce high-quality geodata, which it must package and make available to investors. This is necessary, Mr. Speaker, because mineral investors are not attracted to countries where they must collect data from scratch. In this context, let us note that almost the whole of southern Guyana remains unexplored. And the second point, Mr. Speaker, the government needs to promote Guyana as a mineral investment destination. This may require more than mere participation in annual mining conventions. It requires the government to employ trained foreign affairs officers and private promoters. In this promotion effort, Mr. Speaker, government must also recognize that much exploration internationally is conducted by junior companies on whom the majors depend heavily for new and de-risked investment opportunities. Mr. Speaker, a brief word on bauxite. The finance minister reported that 2023 saw a significant drop in bauxite exports. As we are aware, the bauxite industry has for decades presented many challenges, some seemingly insurmountable. Guyana, however, needs to better leverage its comparative advantage in that its bauxite deposits can produce probably the world's widest range of bauxite products, such as metallurgical grade, refractory grade, cement grade, and chemical grade bauxites. That apart, the gifting of some of the country's richest deposits by the previous PPP government to an investor who sees a strategic value in keeping those deposits out of the world's supply remains problematic. Later, I intend to ask the Minister of Natural Resources to inform this nation about the status of the royalty payments and other taxes from bauxite mining, as well as from manganese mining in the Northwest District. Sand and quarry stone. Mr. Speaker, the increased mining of sand and quarry stone is to be expected given the growth in construction, notwithstanding that much of that construction is ill-planned. The government now needs to urgently draft a comprehensive and forward-looking land management plan to strategically govern the competing use of the lands bordering the Linden-Suzdijk Highway, from where sand and loam are extracted. Such a plan must map out and dedicate areas for such uses as sand and loam mining, housing development, tourism and recreation, industrial sites, farming, future transportation links, environmental protection, and nature reserves. The disorderliness must now cease, Comrade Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as regards construction stone, rock sources for such minerals, such materials are not as available nor accessible as our highway sand deposits. The government therefore needs to increase availability of good rock materials by conducting dedicated geological surveys and to increase accessibility by building or improving road and river transportation routes. Oil and gas, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, our oil and gas industry is constantly in a state of turmoil because the government has demonstrated that it is unpatriotic and incompetent in equal measure. It is with utter disgust that I rise now to address an existential issue for our oil industry. The government's refusal to provide proof of Exxon US $2 billion parent company guarantee in the event of an oil spill, as first ordered by Justice Prasad, risks putting our entire country in jeopardy. While the case on full liability coverage is being decided, this parent company guarantee served as one of Guyana's first defense in the event of an oil spill. More than that, however, what patriotic government, Comrade Speaker, would refuse to provide evidence that Guyana is in a safer position, especially after the court has ordered that this document be established? This demonstrates a lack of respect for the judicial process and a woeful disregard for transparency and accountability. For Vice President Jagdeo to claim that he has no say in ensuring the EPA provides this document and to say to take the position that there is no obligation to provide it in the course of this court case, is equally troubling. He claims that his government believes in transparency and accountability, but at every turn they demonstrate that their real loyalty is to secrecy. Mr. Speaker, we saw the government join with Exxon to appeal a decision handed down by Justice Samuel Kissoon that the operator provide full liability coverage, including a parent company guarantee. We labeled that action what it was, unpatriotic. We reiterate now the importance of a parent company guarantee as well as oil spill insurance so that Guyana does not bear the brunt of an oil spill's cost if we are unfortunate enough to face one. The government is rushing ahead, Comrade Speaker, approving development after development without safeguarding the interests of the Guyanese people. This practice must stop. Mr. Speaker, we see pernicious attitude that is reflected in Guyana's cost oil audits, where we in the opposition had to fight along with civil society and the media to get the government to even agree to the audit. We had to fight to get the government to also release audits, Comrade Speaker. And when the first audit finally came into the public domain, it had to come on the backs of a leak to the press. We say to the government, shame on you. We say to the government that that attitude is unpatriotic. Mr. Speaker, we say to the government that this practice of wanton secrecy must come to an end. Even worse, Mr. Speaker, the first audit erupted into chaos as the government claims it was a junior functionary who agreed to the reduced amount in dispute from $214 million to only $3 million, potentially robbing Guyana of $100 million. We continue to believe he was not acting on his own, Comrade Speaker, and that this should be thoroughly investigated. Mr. Speaker, this sum could have been used to train not only 610 youths as the claim was made by Comrade Hamilton, but all of our young people, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, permit me a moment to dwell a little more on the issue of Guyana's coarse oil audit and the arbitration process we must now undertake to recover in excess of $100 million from our first audit. After the laundry list of controversies we witnessed with that audit, many Guyanese expected the government to take this process more seriously and to immediately assemble an audit team of legal, accounting, and arbitration experts to reclaim our funds. We have heard not one word, Comrade Speaker, not one word on this issue, and this budget seems silent as well. Mr. Speaker, if the government wants to show the Guyanese people that it is committed to safeguarding their rights, it must assemble an appropriate team, fund them, and treat this issue with the same urgency that it spends the same hundreds of millions of US dollars. Even further, it is nonsensical to borrow millions of US dollars when you have monies available for you to retrieve. Mr. Speaker, the government must take this seriously, and we will stand with every patriotic Guyanese to hold their feet to the fire until they fulfill their duty. Natural gas, Comrade Speaker. I turn to the issue of natural gas, which has been dominated of late by the gas to energy project and its related pipeline. Mr. Speaker, why does the government continue to hide the details of its agreement with Exxon for this pipeline? We need to know the interest rates Guyana is being charged for this pipeline, as well as what insurance is in place in the event of a leak. Mr. Speaker, the government's love of secrecy is toxic, and that toxicity, many worry, will result in another disaster like the Skelton Sugar Factory. We call again for the government to release this information, just as we have called for the government to release the operators' quarterly oil field production and development reports. Guyanese have a right, Comrade Speaker, to know what is happening in this country and what it costs them. On the issue of natural gas production and use, we call on the government to deliver a comprehensive gas utilization master plan. Their attempts to do so, Comrade Speaker, have thus far been feeble and half-hearted. Guyana is replete with opportunities to make use of natural gas resources to benefit our people and the industry. When in government, and this is a promise, Comrade Speaker, we will commission an extensive study of Guyana's natural gas and its uses. We will craft a study that unlocks this industry and position Guyana, Comrade Speaker, in such a way that we will benefit fully from those resources. Mr. Speaker, this government does not like studies. From the sentiments over there, you know that they don't like studies, Mr. Speaker. This government, Mr. Speaker, we believe that we cannot act wildly. We cannot act wildly. That when billions of dollars are on the line, it is not a no-brainer, Comrade Speaker. It is not a no-brainer. Mr. Speaker, it would be remiss of me if I don't say a few words on Region 2 budget. Region 2 remains a key contributor to our GDP and the growth and development of our country. I have lamented in the past the PPP's track record of doing nothing for Region 2 from 1992 to 2015. Mr. Speaker, you did nothing. Mr. Speaker, they did nothing. Nothing they did. Mr. Speaker, it was the APNO AFC without oil, running on a meager $220 billion budget that began to fix the mess. They left that PPP government. Mr. Speaker, before the PPP left government, the rice farmers were protesting, lighting the road afire and crushing them. We fixed it, Comrade Speaker. The dire blackout situation in the region, we fixed it. The dilapidated infrastructure, like Superman, speedboat Stelling, and the Guyana police station, we transformed them. Mr. Speaker, with the return of the PPP in 2020, so that the carefree attitude and the mismanagement of the region. Mr. Speaker, the education sector in the region might be a good place to start. Mr. Speaker, put a coalition vision for this section. Plans and policies were developed and executed to address the critical issues, such as ensuring that every child goes to school dropout rates, transportation for students in hinterland and far-flung communities, pass rate for maths and English, to name a few. Mr. Speaker, the massive turnaround of the education sector under the coalition government is well known. Today they boast about it like if they did anything. Mr. Speaker, now that the PPP are back in power, the sector seems to be going backwards in the region. Mr. Speaker, the time will not allow me to elaborate on the dilapidated and unserviceable condition of the school boats and buses. We saw it in the Pomeroy, we see it everywhere. The frequent absence of the hot meals instituted by the APNO-FC to ensure that people's children no longer have to sit in a classroom on an empty stomach, Mr. Speaker. And then there is the discrimination factor. Mr. Speaker, the PPP removed the new Venezuelan secondary school through an illegal supernumerary appointment. The qualified Afro-Guyanese substantive head teacher. I don't want to get into the details, but if you know if it's discrimination. Mr. Speaker, they denied without explanation an application by another qualified Afro-Guyanese for the deputy principal position at ETI. Mr. Speaker, the acting head of the training college, another Afro-Guyanese professional, was replaced by a lesser qualified supporter of the PPP. They moved to illegally suspend the Afro-headmistress of the 8th of May primary. They took protest action, and me talking to the minister right in his house and telling her that it's illegal to reverse that erroneous act. Mr. Speaker, they have much more money at their disposal now. So it is quite easy to construct buildings. But if you don't have proper management of the institutions, and if you treat the human resource, your teachers, in an undeserving and a discriminatory manner, including denying them a livable income, then the result will be, as we are seeing now, increased school dropouts, low attendance, low matriculation rate. As admitted in your own budget, the matriculation rate reversed from 43% in 2019 under APNO-FC to 34% under the PPP government. Check Appendix 1, check Table 1, Comrade Speaker. You admitted it. Public Works, Comrade Speaker. Let's look at public works and agriculture in the region. There is a fundamental flaw in which the PPP is attempting to sell their empty budget. They try to sell you that the allocations are bigger. So that means that you're getting more. Not true, Comrade Speaker. I thank the Honorable Member Kunja for highlighting the roads and bridges done by the government. But what she didn't tell you, Comrade Speaker, was that many of the roads and bridges mentioned were requested and some even budgeted for since 2020, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I've spoken with so many farmers who decried the state of their farm access roads. Mr. Speaker, the Love Alliance access road is an example. Representation has been made by the APNO-FC in every single budget cycle since the PPP came to power, yet they ignore the plight of the farmers. The Mashabo access road started in 2021, 600 meters, yet to be completed. Streets in Dartmouth, requested and even spoken of by the minister in this house since 2021, yet to be completed. Mr. Speaker, they give you the impression that they are doing so many roads, yet if you check the record, Comrade Speaker, you will find that with budgets between $200 million and $300 million, the APNO-FC was able to do just as many roads at around 1/3 of the cost and of a better quality in many instances. Go check the record, Comrade Speaker. We've done the analysis. Health and energy production. The state of our health facilities in the region remain a critical issue to most Esquibians. The physical condition of the facilities, the absence of drugs and medical supplies and equipment, and the absence of the required human resources leaves much to be desired. Mr. Speaker, just last week, I interacted with a sick patient. I will call him patient X. He required a full body scan to diagnose what really was wrong with him. Comrade Speaker, unfortunately, died before acquiring the finance to do so. Mr. Speaker, days later, I got a call from another patient, patient Y. They like to discriminate, so you cannot call people's name. Patient Y, what undergo surgery, Comrade Speaker. He ended up facing the indignity of urinating himself hours after requesting assistance. Mr. Speaker, I give these examples to demonstrate to the government the deep flaws in their policy with respect to the sector and the region. The government is boasting about buildings, of building a new hospital in Coffee Grove. Yet neighbors confirmed that the entire foundation or sections of it was poorly constructed and had to be ripped out. Who is standing the bill for that? Who is standing the bill for that, Mr. Speaker? But that apart, Mr. Speaker, building new hospitals can't solve the problem if we don't fix what already exists. To this end, the human resource is critical to the quality of health care you will deliver as a government. I will speak a little on energy. Prior to 2015, Region 2 suffered immensely from the blackout plague. The APNO AFC invested almost $2 billion on a new 5.4 megawatt power plant with a lifespan of 20 years. Mr. Speaker, 5 years in past yet, and 2 out of 3 already failed and out of service. Go visit the power plant. I've been there just days ago. Now they are renting about 7 backup sets from Macro to the tune of tens of millions of dollars, Comrade Speaker, tens of millions of dollars per month. It just doesn't make sense, Comrade Speaker. Somebody pocket has to be receiving tons of cash. How else do you explain it, Comrade Speaker? Mr. Speaker, as it relates to the 2 solar farms in St. Monica and Kabakuburi in the Cameroon, none are currently providing power for any of the homes in the communities. I can't expand on the reasons, but it's incompetence, Comrade Speaker. That's all I would say. Comrade Speaker, in concluding, you know, there are lots of issues. There are lots. I didn't get to hear the comrade from Comrade Pearson and others, and I don't have the time to rebut them, but I will pass some of my notes. I have to pass those notes to the Honorable Vince Roy Jordan in the area of agriculture to tell you about the mismanagement and all that is happening in the sector. Comrade Speaker, Budget 2024 in closing. Budget 2024 is a colossal failure and does not address the immediate needs of our people. The APNO AFC joint opposition, though not consulted on the budget, made a number of recommendations in line with our people-centered approach. In keeping with our request, I asked that the government immediately amend the proposed budget to include the following. Comrade Speaker, 1, raise the non-taxable income threshold to $150,000. 2, include a cost of living allowance for all workers. 3, reduce VAT to 8% and remove it completely from all locally produced goods. 4, raise the minimum public servant salary by 50%. 5, remove tax for low-wage workers. 6, guarantee all household a livable wage. And 7, free education for all students, including those at the University of Guyana. Mr. Speaker, this is what a $1 trillion coalition budget would look like. Mr. Speaker, if these requests are met, be assured that you will have the coalition's support. Mr. Speaker, the coalition was able to transform this country and offer a better package without a shadow of a doubt to the citizens of this country with a smaller budget and without the proceeds of oil. Because of this track record, Comrade Speaker, we are confident. We are confident that after the next general and regional elections, when the next coalition government is formed, we will have the resources necessary to deliver a better quality of life for our Guyanese. I thank you.